The Prime Minister, beginning of this morning, a tour of the country, her attempt to sell the plan for Brexit to the public at large. But trouble does lie ahead, with nearly 100 Conservative MPs set to vote against it. Well, let's speak now to the Cabinet Office Minister, David Lidington, joining us from Westminster this morning. Mr Lidington, very good morning to you. Every day that passes, more and more names add themselves to the list, saying that they will not vote with the party leader, not vote with the Prime Minister, will not support her deal. How confident are you that you will get the yes vote that you need?
Oh, I think it's clearly, if the vote were today, it would be a difficult one to win. But I think that we have time between now and the 11th to make the case, and even more importantly, for MPs in Parliament to listen to the message coming up from British business in all parts of the country that they want this deal done. The last thing that is needed for investment and job creation in this country is yet more uncertainty. And business is saying this very, very strongly indeed, to get this done. And I'm finding, talking not just to my own constituents, but to visiting other parts of the country as well, the message coming up from ordinary people is very much, however we voted, leave or remain, we want this sorted. They rather admire the resilience and determination of the Prime Minister to go out and fight for a decent compromise. I think most people accept it's a compromise, but it's one that actually does deliver a close economic partnership with the EU for the future that's good for jobs and living standards in Britain, but at the same time delivers on the result of the referendum and actually leaving the EU with all that entails.
But Minister, just in terms of that close economic partnership that we have with the European Union, I mean, Donald Trump does have a point, doesn't he? That when you are unable to diverge, as indeed it appears, to the extent that you might want to, which it appears from the political declaration, we will not be able to. It's impossible to sign free trade agreements, the likes of which the Brexiteers have been telling us would be the easiest thing possible. I mean, the United States, if we want to sign an FTA with them, where's our competitive advantage if we still continue to align ourselves with the European Union?
Well, actually, contrary to what you just said, the text of the agreement says in terms that the United Kingdom's going to have an independent trade policy. Now, what is true is that during the temporary transitional arrangements, while we can negotiate free trade agreements with other countries, there will be some constraints on how they can be implemented while those transitional arrangements are in place. Those drop away. We have a fully independent trade policy. But I've never thought that negotiating a trade deal with the United States or anybody else was going to be easy. President Trump has always said he puts America first. He'll fight hard for American interests in any trade talks. We need to fight equally hard for British interests, whether we're talking to the United States or to Japan or China or any other country anywhere around the world.
But surely it's always been an either or. If we want to continue to have as close to frictionless trade with the European Union as possible, then we need, according to the European Union, to maintain at least a facade of regulatory alignment. If we want to sign free trade agreements with the rest of the world and benefit from them, we need to be able to diverge from our relationship with the European Union. You can't have both.
It's the common external tariff and the common commercial policy, the two elements of EU practice that involve the EU acting collectively for free trade agreements. But the future partnership document that was agreed on Sunday by us and the EU 27 says in terms that the UK is going to have an independent trade policy. There's a transitional period to be worked through first, just as there was a transitional period when we joined the EU in the first place.
You can call it whatever you like. You can call it whatever you like. But if the future trading relationship between us and the United Kingdom is based on the single market, the customs union, I mean, it doesn't matter what you call it, but we won't be able to diverge in the way in which Boris Johnson, perhaps even Liam Fox, have suggested that they would prefer.
But we've made it clear that we're not staying in the customs union and the single market, that we're aiming for, yes, a close free trade agreement with the European Union, just as we want to have good free trade agreements with other countries around the world. And I don't see an incompatibility about those two things.
What happens, and you spoke earlier on about business, the business community wanting us to get on with this, and they want it concluded one way or t'other. I mean, what do you say to the business community who are asking, and entirely legitimately, what happens? What happens if you can't convince enough of your party colleagues to vote for the deal as proposed by Theresa May?
I think the EU's made it very clear that they're not prepared to reopen the package that was agreed on Sunday last weekend. For the 27 EU countries, this has been a very difficult process. They've had to make some compromises and concessions that move from their previous positions. And you can tell from the flack Michel Barnier has had from a number of European governments in the last few days that they think that this has been a really difficult agreement to reach. They won't.
Indeed,
they won't.
And the business community
think,
recognises that. So what happens though if your colleagues within the Conservative Party ignore that, vote no? I mean, what happens next?
The one certainty is that there would be much increased uncertainty, because I think you would have some people.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lidington, what does that mean?
What it means is that there would be, in those circumstances, there would be some people in Parliament who would be pushing very hard for a no-deal exit from the EU, and there will be other people in Parliament who would be pushing very hard to drop Brexit altogether, to find a way of defeating the reversing the outcome of the referendum. But what I think MPs have to focus on in the next 10 days is the reality that there is not some sort of perfect alternative that meets all their wishes and first preferences, that is there if only they put aside the actual compromise deal that has been negotiated and which is on the table. And I think if they look at the compromise deal that is on offer, they will see that this works well for the interests of people in the UK. A close trading partnership, better than that Canada has. A close security partnership, so our police and justice systems can continue to work together against terrorism and against serious and organised crime, from people smuggling to drug trafficking. Those are things that are very much in the interests of people from all political opinions in the UK and all parts of the UK.
So we are clear that in the event of Parliament saying no, things will be unclear. But in terms of your own party, I mean, is this a point at which we all have to say, look, you know, Theresa May has held on longer than many people expected. She has brought a deal back from the European Union that the 27 have agreed to. If she doesn't get the vote, if she doesn't get the support, surely at that point the question has to be, why are you still Prime Minister?
No, not at all. I don't see that the fundamentals can be wished away by gossip about changing a party leader. The truths about the position of the 27 other countries in this negotiation will remain true. The very difficult fine balance of parliamentary arithmetic between the different parties will remain the case the day after as well as the day before. So those basic facts are not going to go away. And I think that the very last thing the Conservative Party needs is all the upheaval and the division that would be created by a leadership contest. The one thing that people out there notice about political parties is when they are divided and they are squabbling amongst themselves, because voters quite reasonably turn around and say, well, if you really can't stand one another, why should we trust you with the future of the country? That's the lesson we learned as a Tory party the hard way in the years running up to a landslide defeat in 1997.